Hi, I'm Professor Gaines from Bossier Parish Community College. Our subject in this lecture is business law, and our objective is to demonstrate the simple difference of purpose between torts and crimes. Let us begin by giving a textbook definition of the law. Law consists of enforceable rules governing relationships among individuals and between individuals and their society. Rules that govern relationships. These rules involve rights and duties. A right is a legal ability to do or refrain from doing something, while a duty is the legal obligation to let another person do or refrain from doing a particular act. For example, the right to remain silent. If you have that right, it is your right not to speak when arrested, not to speak to an officer. It is the officer's duty to let you be silent, or if you so choose, to let you speak. Rights and duties. We find rights and duties in both our individual relationships with one another and our relationships with society as a whole. Simply put, torts are duties breached against another individual, while crimes are duties breached against the society as a whole. So what's the simple difference of purpose between torts and crimes? I have a few guests here with me this morning that are going to help us. Mr. Lucky, Mr. Nice, and Mrs. Hugh. Let me give you an example of an incident that may happen to a person like Mr. Lucky. Mr. Lucky, or Mr. Joe Lucky, or Happy Joe Lucky, as his friends call him, is walking about minding his own business when he encounters Mr. Nice, Mr. Not So Nice. And as a result of this encounter with Mr. Not So Nice, Mr. Lucky is left with a problem or an injury on his eye. Now, once again, Mr. Lucky, minding his business, encounters Mr. Not So Nice. And the end result is Mr. Lucky having an injury represented by this X, which is referred to as a type of damage in torts. Now, when we see in our example a damage, the purpose of tort law is to compensate for damage. In this sense, we will use our guests again to demonstrate how we compensate. It will be Mr. Happy Joe Lucky that will call an attorney, Mrs. Hugh. Mrs. I'ma sue you. And Mrs. Sue will take on Not So Nice and bring him to court in a lawsuit on Lucky's behalf. The end result will be, if Lucky prevails, that he will be compensated. But we know that Lucky will not be able to get his eye back. The form of compensation he will get will be in the form of dollars. And this is why torts is to compensate, the primary purpose. Let's address this as a crime now. We have our same incident. We have Happy Joe Lucky going about his business. He runs into Not So Nice. Notice that they are both citizens of the same society, and a society has an interest in protecting its citizens. When you harm one of their citizens, the society takes an action against you. When Happy-Go-Lucky is harmed, again we have Mrs. Hugh on the scene. But instead of an attorney that you call to sue somebody, it would be more like a district attorney. And she puts on her hat and she brings Not So Nice into a criminal court this time. And the end result will be that Mrs. Hugh, meeting Mr. Nice, will put Mr. Not So Nice behind bars as a punishment for what he has done to the society. So we see that we have torts which generate for Mr. Lucky compensation, and crimes that generate and focus on Mr. Not So Nice and give him a punishment. In conclusion, Business professionals, as we are, we should always have the goal of protecting our assets. To carry this out, we always attempt to avoid the cost of unnecessary litigation. Now, understanding the simple difference between torts and crimes and the simple purpose behind them is important to achieve that end. Remember, this simple purpose of torts is to compensate, and the simple purpose of crimes is to punish. Simple, isn't it? Well, that's the law, and that's a wrap.